My mom sent me a message that morning. No greeting, no explanation, just one sentence. "We no longer trust you." I stared at the screen longer than I should have, not because it surprised me, but because it sounded so final, so rehearsed, like a termination notice disguised as family. I typed back one word, "understood." Then I put my phone down and went on with my day. 2 days later, a lawyer I'd never spoken to before tried to reach me, urgent, anxious, suddenly polite. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. Before I get into it, hit like and tell me where you're listening from. If you've ever been shut out by your own family, you'll understand why this story matters. My name is Hazel. I'm in my early 40s now, and for most of my adult life, I was the person in my family who made things work quietly. I had a stable career, steady income, and the kind of routine that didn't look impressive from the outside but kept everyone else comfortable. I wasn't flashy. I didn't talk about money, I just handled things. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house sounded a lot like responsibility. If something broke, I fixed it. If a bill showed up unpaid, I covered it. If there was tension at the table, I smoothed it over. My mother, Diane, liked to say she was proud of my independence, but it always came with an unspoken expectation. Because I could handle more, I should. And because I was the oldest, I always would. My father stayed out of most conflicts. He sat at the head of the table, nodded when decisions were made, and rarely questioned where the money came from or who was paying. Silence was his contribution. Peace, at least on the surface, was the family rule. Then there was my sister Marissa. She was younger, charming, and always in the middle of something that just hadn't worked out. A job that ended unexpectedly. A bill that came up at the wrong time. A plan that needed a little more support. My parents worried about her constantly. I was told not to judge, to be patient, to remember that family helps family. So I did. For years, I took care of the financial side of things without being asked directly. Payments related to the house, ongoing bills, unexpected repairs that came up after storms or bad timing. No one sat me down and thanked me. It was just understood that I would step in. And I told myself I was doing the right thing, that this was what being a good daughter looked like. From the outside, we looked solid. Holiday dinners, group photos, conversations that stayed polite and light. But underneath that, there was a quiet imbalance. I wasn't included in decisions. I was informed after the fact. When something worked out, it was the family's success. When something needed fixing, it somehow became mine. I didn't realize how long I had been playing that role until the message arrived. Until one sentence made it clear that my place in the family had never been as secure as I believed. Looking back, the signs were always there. I just kept choosing not to read them. Because for a long time, I thought if I kept saying yes, it would eventually mean something. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came in small, uncomfortable moments that were easy to excuse if you didn't want to see them. A charge here that didn't line up with what I remembered. A bill I was sure I'd already covered showing up again. When I asked, I got the same answers every time. "It's temporary. We'll fix it next month. Don't make this a big deal." I stopped asking. That was the first mistake. A few weeks later, I saw a photo online while waiting in line at a grocery store. My parents stood in front of the house smiling like they'd just won something. Marissa was in the middle arm, linked through my mother's her kids, in matching outfits. The caption was short and glowing. Something about new beginnings. Something about being proud. The comments were full of praise. People congratulating her. Talking about how lucky the family was to have someone like Marissa holding things together. My name wasn't there, not even in passing. I read it twice. Then again. I told myself it was nothing. Social media wasn't real life. I paid, put my phone away, and drove home with that familiar, tight feeling in my chest, the one I'd learned to ignore. It got harder to ignore after that. The family group chat changed tone. Jokes landed differently. Someone made a comment about how nice it must be to have support whenever you need it. Another message followed with a laughing reaction. No one said my name, but everyone knew who they meant. I typed responses and deleted them. I didn't want to be sensitive. I didn't want to be difficult. Then came the afternoon that ended it. I was at the house in the backyard doing what I'd done countless times before, taking care of things that didn't feel like mine anymore. The door to the kitchen was open, letting in voices I wasn't meant to hear. I recognized them instantly. My mother's voice low and confident. Marissa's laugh, light and careless. They weren't whispering. Marissa said something about how smooth everything was going to be once it was finalized. My mother replied with a sound that almost passed for relief. Then came the sentence that stopped me in place. "She's not family," Marissa said. "She's just the sponsor." There was no anger in her voice, no guilt, just certainty. My mother didn't correct her. I stood there longer than I should have, long enough for the meaning to settle, long enough to understand that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a moment taken out of context. It was how they talked when they thought I wasn't around. It was how they saw me when there was nothing to gain from pretending otherwise. I didn't confront them. I didn't cry. I walked out the back gate and sat in my car until my hands stopped shaking. That was the moment something finally broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I realized I hadn't been part of the family structure at all. I'd been a resource, a backup plan, a line item that made everything else possible, and once I saw that I couldn't unsee it. I didn't confront anyone after that afternoon. I didn't ask questions or demand explanations. I went quiet in a way that surprised even me. Not the kind of silence that waits to be noticed, but the kind that moves out of the way and starts watching. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table with the overhead light off the room, lit only by the glow of my laptop. I opened my accounts and began pulling records I hadn't looked at closely in years. Payments, bills, repairs, insurance. Each line felt familiar, like rereading old journal entries you didn't realize you were writing, month after month, year after year, always steady, always on time. I didn't feel angry yet. I felt focused. I made a folder and started saving everything, not obsessively, not in a panic, calmly, methodically. When something didn't make sense, I flagged it and moved on. I wasn't trying to prove betrayal. I was trying to understand the shape of it. And the more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't generosity that had gotten out of hand. It was dependence that had been normalized. A few days later, I spoke to a lawyer. I didn't frame it as a family crisis. I asked practical questions. What happens when someone takes financial control without consent? What options exist when boundaries are crossed quietly? I listened more than I talked. I took notes. I didn't tell them what I planned to do. After that call, I slept better than I had in weeks. The message from my mother came the next morning. The same sentence. No trust, no access, locks changed, codes updated. It was written like policy, not grief. I replied the same way. Understood. Then I turned my phone face down and went to work. That was the moment I stopped reacting and started deciding. I didn't cancel anything right away. I didn't announce changes. I let routines continue just long enough to finish preparing. I gathered emails that showed expectations instead of requests, messages that assumed my compliance, conversations where silence had been mistaken for agreement. By the end of the week, everything I needed was organized, not to punish anyone, not to make a point, just to protect myself and reclaim what had been taken slowly, politely, and without permission. I looked around my apartment differently, then noticing how little of my life actually belonged to me anymore. Even my time felt allocated elsewhere. That realization hurt more than any accusation. But it also sharpened something inside me. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was drawing a line, one I should have drawn years earlier, and preparing to stand behind it without flinching. They thought my silence meant compliance. They believed the door had closed on me. They didn't realize I was the one stepping back to see the whole structure clearly for the first time. Quietly, carefully, with intention, patience, and clarity. 2 days after my mother's message, the one that ended with changed locks and revoked trust, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then it rang again and again. When I finally answered, the voice on the other end was careful in a way that felt rehearsed. She introduced herself as an attorney representing my parents. Her tone was polite but strained, like someone trying to hold a door shut while something heavy pressed from the other side. She said there had been a misunderstanding. She said everyone was hoping to resolve this privately. She asked if I had a few minutes to talk. I told her I was busy. She paused, then asked when I wouldn't be. That was the moment I understood how quickly the balance had shifted. 2 days earlier, I was someone they could lock out with a text. Now I was someone their lawyer couldn't afford to ignore. I didn't agree to a meeting right away. I let the call end without committing to anything. That afternoon, another message came through. This one was longer, softer. My mother said she was hurt by my distance. She said family matters shouldn't be handled by outsiders. She said we could talk like adults if I was willing. I didn't respond. The confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened where everything in my family always happened at a gathering meant to look warm and celebratory from the outside. A room full of relatives, polite laughter, familiar faces pretending not to notice tension because acknowledging it would make them responsible for it. I arrived late on purpose. When I walked in, conversation slowed. A few people smiled too quickly. My sister looked up, froze for half a second, then looked away. My mother stiffened but didn't turn around. My father stared at the table in front of him like it might offer instructions. I didn't sit down. I didn't greet anyone. I waited. Eventually, my mother stood and cleared her throat, ready to steer the moment back into something manageable. That was when I spoke. I didn't come to argue, I said. My voice didn't shake. I came to be clear. That got their attention. I reached into my bag and placed a thin folder on the table. No dramatics, no raised voice, just paper meeting wood. For years, I covered payments related to the house, monthly expenses, ongoing bills, repairs when things broke, insurance when things went wrong. I didn't do it because I was asked. I did it because I was expected to. My sister scoffed. "You're exaggerating." I slid the folder toward her. "Those are summaries. Everything's rounded. Nothing complicated, just totals, dates, patterns." She didn't touch it. My mother spoke next, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Those were gifts." I nodded slowly. If they were gifts, there would have been consent. There wasn't. The lawyer shifted in her seat. I went on. I talked about how access had been assumed, how decisions were made without me, how my name disappeared from stories where my support remained. I didn't accuse. I described. I didn't call anyone names. I used facts. Then I said the sentence that made the room go quiet. "I heard how you talk about me when you think I'm not listening." My sister's face drained of color. I didn't repeat the words right away. I let the silence stretch. I wanted them to remember the moment, not just the phrase. When I finally spoke again, I said it once, calmly, without emphasis. "She's not family. She's just the sponsor." Someone inhaled sharply. A chair scraped. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. I looked directly at her. "You didn't correct that." "That's not what she meant," my father said, finally speaking. "I know exactly what she meant," I replied, "because of everything that came before and everything that followed." The lawyer leaned forward then. "Hazel, if we could just take a moment." "I am taking a moment," I said. "This one." I explained what the next steps would look like, not as a threat, as a process. An accounting. A return of funds that had been taken under the assumption of obligation rather than agreement. I said I wasn't interested in punishment. I wasn't interested in humiliation. I was interested in responsibility. My sister stood up abruptly. "You can't do this. This will ruin everything." I met her eyes. "It already did. I'm just naming it." My mother started crying then. Not loud sobs, controlled tears, the kind she used when she wanted sympathy without admitting fault. She talked about sacrifice, about how much she'd given, about how families don't keep score. "I didn't," I said. "Until you did." The lawyer asked for time, asked for privacy, asked if we could step away and talk through options. I agreed to one conversation, nothing more. We moved to a quieter corner of the room. Her voice dropped. "They're willing to settle," she said, quietly. "I'm not interested in quiet," I replied. "I'm interested in complete." She hesitated. "That may take some time." "It already took years," I said. "I've been patient." She looked at the folder again, then back at me. "You have documentation?" "Yes." "And recordings?" "Yes. And if this goes public, I won't control that," I said. "I'll just tell the truth." That was when her composure cracked. Just slightly, enough for me to see the panic underneath. She excused herself to make a call. Across the room, my family sat frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. They looked smaller somehow, less certain, like people realizing the rules they'd been playing by no longer applied. When the lawyer returned, her voice was different, respectful, measured. She said they would review everything. She said they would be in touch within a few days. I nodded. That works. As I turned to leave, my mother called my name. I stopped but didn't turn around. You didn't have to do it like this, she said. I looked back then. Neither did you. I walked out without another word. No applause, no confrontation in the parking lot. Just space. Clean and quiet and finally mine. 3 days later, the lawyer called again. This time she didn't waste time on pleasantries. She said the amount would be returned in full. She said the transfer would happen by the end of the week. She asked if there were any other conditions. There is one, I said. She waited. No more contact, I replied. Not through you, not through anyone else. There was a pause. Then she said she understood. When the funds came through, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, like something that had been leaning at the wrong angle for years had finally been set up right. They had said they didn't trust me. I trusted facts, and facts once laid out in the open don't argue back. The money arrived quietly. No announcement, no apology attached. Just a clean transfer that confirmed what had already happened. The balance settled, the numbers aligned, and with that, the longest argument of my life ended without another word being spoken. I didn't feel relief right away. What I felt was stillness. I packed over the next few days, slowly choosing what to take and what to leave behind. Not just objects, habits, expectations, the reflex to check my phone every time it buzzed. I moved into a small apartment in a different city, the kind of place where the windows let in too much light in the morning and no one knew my last name. It was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty. The family group chat disappeared from my screen. No new messages replaced it. No late-night calls, no carefully worded updates disguised as concern, just silence. At first it felt unnatural, like standing in a room after the noise stops and waiting for something to crash. Nothing did. I started noticing small things again, the way my evenings stretched when no one needed anything from me, how my weekends stayed mine, how my thoughts felt less crowded. I slept better. I ate when I was hungry, not when it was convenient for someone else. No one reached out to explain. No one tried to repair what had been broken. That told me everything I needed to know. Closure didn't come from conversation. It came from clarity. People sometimes ask if it hurt to walk away. The honest answer is that it would have hurt more to stay. I didn't lose my family. I stopped financing a role that erased me. And in the quiet that followed, I realized something important. Peace doesn't always arrive as forgiveness. Sometimes it arrives as distance and stays because it's earned. I used to think family meant access, who could reach you, rely on you, take from you without asking. I was wrong. Love isn't measured by how much you give until you disappear. It's measured by whether you're still seen when you stop. I didn't lose my family. I stopped confusing obligation with affection. If this story sounds familiar, tell me where you're listening from and share your experience in the comments. You're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.